I get it. You're trash at Redstone and you want to be better. But the question is, how? Well, lucky for you, I'm going to show you the 6 most important Redstone builds to start building your own Redstone devices, and all of that in less than 10 minutes. So let's get started. The first and most obvious category is item sorters, and the basic impulse SV sorter is the way to go. Just put 4 items in the far right columns that will not go through the sorter, and then the item in the far left that you would like sorted. Go over that hopper. The signal will be greater than 2, meaning this repeater powers this block, which turns this redstone torch off, allowing items to flow to the chest below. That is the basic impulse SV design. Now, the alternate to that is now the copper golem sorter, which simply works by placing items in the copper chest, and then the copper golem searches that chest, grabs the items, and looks at the closest 10 chests to it to sort that item. If it finds that item in one of the chests, it places it there. Now, before we move forward, if you find this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Moving on to category 2, we have item elevators, and there's a couple ways we can do this. Upper elevator system, which as items enter into the bottom dropper, the comparator detects that, and then the observers pick up that change in block state and push the item all the way up to the top. If you'll notice, these comparators are actually pointing into these comparators here. Alternately, you can use a water column method, which uses soul sand at the bottom. Then when items get put in the dropper, the comparator picks that up, and we do a loop of that, and you can see items shooting out the top. My preferred method of doing this, though, is making use of comparators with observers, and you can see there's a piston underneath that observer. When we place items into this dropper, you see the comparator activates the piston, which makes these observers go face to face, and we get 1 tick pulses pushing the items up. Once it's empty, it drops. But if due to size constraints you can't do this vertically, you can also do this horizontally. Next, moving on to pulse generators and pulse extenders, or aka clocks. You'll see that this is the most simple way to make a clock in Minecraft. You depower this block, the torch goes on, and you see this looping pattern. And this is very helpful because you can actually change how long that clock lasts. As you can see, it is going much faster, but we can make it go slower. You can also use the patented etho hopper clock method, in which you place items in one of the hoppers below, and the more items you put, the longer that clock will take to give an output. Depowering this block, you see that that will go back and forth, cycling the items in the hoppers. The pistons will cycle back and forth, giving you a clock. Now, if you can't do this in the vertical way, you can also do it horizontally, like so. It is worth noting that every 2.5 items equals 1 second, so you can give very specific clock outputs. Now, second, we have pulse extenders, and this is the most basic pulse extender in the game. When you give it a pulse, it holds the signal for a certain amount of time. You can add more comparators in this cycle moving outward in order to extend that pulse. But you can also do it in this way by making a slight change to etho hopper clocks by removing one of the sticky pistons and replacing it with a normal piston. If you give a pulse, it extends, giving a power output to this block. But then after a certain amount of time, that piston extends, and then once it retracts, the signal will be lost. Moving on to our fourth category, that is red coders. And red coders, although they look complicated, are quite simple. Basically, you want one of these torches to light up, and that torch depends on the power input of this block right here. In this case, we have a crafter giving a power output of 3. Therefore, the torch in position 3 of the red coder is on. This works by taking the signal strength from this block, pushing it up 1, making the signal strength 1 less on the top than it is on the bottom. You have repeaters lining that, and then torches on the bottom facing into that block there. It is worth noting that in the first column, you have to have a comparator in subtract mode with a barrel and a comparator pointing into it. with one stackable item in it. Fifth, we have my favorite category, that is randomizers. There's many ways to make randomizers, but the most simplistic way to do that is by taking the power output of a hopper as you shoot a stackable and a non-stackable item into that hopper. You'll see that it gives power outputs of 3 and 1, and you can use that to give 2 different random outputs. Taking this concept even further, we make use of comparator subtraction mode, which basically means that if the output going into the back is greater than the output going into the side of the comparator, it will give an output. But if we were to change this non-stackable item to a stackable item, you will see that the input into the back is only 1, whereas the input into the side is 2, therefore it does not give an output. Using that, we can create 1-to-9 ratios or anything less than that in a dropper, as a dropper randomly selects which slot it's going to pull from. Going to randomly push an item into that hopper, it'll get red. If you put 2 non-stackable items into this barrel facing in, that will only allow a signal to move through the comparator if it is the non-stackable item. So we can see that every time that light flashes, that means the minecart was pushed into the hopper. We can also combine the last category of red coders with this concept of randomizing, and we can use a red coder to then get a random output or a random torch being turned on by using a shulker box method. And if you'll notice, we have 4 different columns right here, and therefore we have 4 shulker boxes in these 2, a dropper and a hopper. So every time we cycle, it gives a different red coder output. And the cool thing is you aren't limited to just 4 columns. You can go up to 9 by adding a variety of different shulker boxes into this system. And you'll see those power outages on the screen. Now, if you don't want repeating values one after another, you can replace that with this, and you will never get the same output one after another. Finally, our last category, and one of the most important, is T flip-flops. Now, Minecraft was very kind by giving us a very easy, basic, and small T flip-flop, such as this. Every single input changes the state of the power output. But what if you wanted the power input in the back to not always change the state of the redstone in the front? In this case, if we give an input, it then does not change that state no matter how many times we power the back. And that is because there is a single stacked item moving through this. But if we were to power then this dropper, we would see that it would push the item back up to the reset point. And we would be able to click this, push it down, and then if we wanted to reset the T flip-flop, click this. So in just 10 minutes, you are on your way to being a redstone master. And now you can start putting together all these different contraptions and make your own redstone builds, not following a tutorial, not doing what anyone else is doing, but making your own redstone. And that is when redstone really comes to life. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate every single one of you, and I will see you next time.